Three, two, one, and we're live. Chris Steinmann, hey man, thanks for taking a little time and talking to my current students as well as anyone who happens to be watching this on YouTube after the fact. Chris, you're a graduate from Ranken Technical College. You're a successful graduate. You've been working in the software development industry since you've graduated. So I think it's awesome, and I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day to talk to my students about the industry and what has helped you along the way and all these kinds of things. So I just want to start with a thank you for taking the time. With that, I can introduce you, and I know you fairly well, but I'll let you maybe introduce yourself because as well as I might know you, you could do the better job.
Sure. So I'm Chris Steinmann. I graduated from Ranken in 2017. I'm currently the lead programmer at Vantage Credit Union. I work primarily in C#.NET plus some SQL, and then I dabble in Xamarin when I have to fix some mobile app stuff.
All right, awesome. So you said a lot there. Vantage Credit Union lead programmer. The main languages on the job, I want to touch on that. You mentioned C#, you mentioned SQL, and Xamarin.
Yep.
Nice, and so it looks like you're in the office. Is that correct?
Yep. We have a little office out here in Eureka that used to be a branch and is now kind of almost primarily for development team and infrastructure's use. So there's only ever like 2 people here.
Okay. So how big is your team at Vantage Credit Union of developers?
Currently it is 2 people, so lead of 1. We're scaling down as we're moving to a software as a service model. So we're just kicking off that big migration in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. So small team. We got the languages, we got the employer. So let me ask you, why did you get into this industry?
Like financial or development in general?
Whatever. I mean, why'd you choose? I mean, you chose to come to Ranken. You chose this industry, and why'd you make that choice?
I think that logic and troubleshooting are some of my strong points, and a lot of development in my current job happens to fall into those 2 categories. Just the reward of figuring out a complicated problem, whether that be an existing bug in a code base or how to accomplish a new thing that business is asking for. I think that that's really rewarding.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I was talking with my students this morning, and we were talking about solving problems and coming up with your own custom solutions. And so just because I was talking about this morning, so here's the question that I'll ask. How much of your problem solving is you coming up with your own logic versus implementing a solution or logic that someone else has implemented and you just have to figure out how to implement their solution?
I think probably 2/3 is finding other solutions and figuring out how to implement them in your own area. I had this discussion just the other day when we were looking at hiring because we use like a development test for prospective hirees. My developer was complaining, oh, well, it's so easy to Google the answers. What's even the point? I think that's a large part of development work, is being able to appropriately find resources for issues that you don't necessarily have immediate solution for. I think that being able to Google a problem is a very strong developer skill, and if you can't do that, then if you're just going to bang your head against something trying to figure out a unique solution, then that's not necessarily a strong point.
Yeah.
But being able to come up with those unique solutions yourself is phenomenal when you can do it. It's just the being able to distinguish between when you can and when you do need to go research, I think, is a more important skill set.
Yeah, I like that answer. I like how you broke it down roughly, 2/3 and 1/3 and the importance of each. I like how you broke that down. So kind of going back to why did you choose the industry question, you said, you feel like you have a set of strengths, and those strengths, be it problem solving and troubleshooting, just kind of naturally led you to this arena.
Yeah, and specifically it led me into kind of this more middleware arena. I mean, you saw me in HTML class. It was not my favorite. So being able to just work with like these connections, the business logic in the background, and some of the database stuff, it lends itself more to my strengths than having to deal with like marketing concerns, accessibility, HTML and CSS.
Okay.
That is less of where my strong suits lie.
Yeah, I like that because the class that is listening to you right now, they're in the front end. I mean, they're doing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and for sure, some people take to that in this class, and they really enjoy this part of it, and the graphical side, and like you said, the accessibility and making all the information look nice. But definitely some other students are like, yeah, let me focus on some more logic oriented, and we're getting into the JavaScript and problem solving side. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and part of the benefit of being a full stack engineer, or maybe part of the downfall, is you shouldn't neglect the pieces that you're not phenomenal at. Like I said, that I have to be responsible for the mobile apps, and that does include front end stuff. It's not in CSS and HTML or JavaScript, but I still have to leverage some of those skills to be able to make the front end look acceptable. Granted, I haven't had to do that in a while with the Xamarin apps because, as I repeatedly tell the business, I am not actually a mobile developer. I'm just a monkey on a typewriter when it comes to mobile. You still do need to be able to leverage some of that knowledge, even if it's not your strong suit.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice. Is just because it's not your strong suit, that's part of how you enable growth is to kind of focus on and work on the things that you're not good at. Yeah. So what's a day in your life like? I mean, what's your 9 to 5? What's your day like?
Yeah, so I try to be an 8 to 4 worker here. It'll vary a bit depending on if I have tickets coming in or the priority of certain business projects at the time. But traditionally, I will spend a little bit of time trying to work on any tickets or production issues that have come in, and then the rest of my time is spent on either project work or organizing the project team and project work in that way. So, for instance, I said we're working on that migration. A large part of my day today is going to be trying to organize my project list for the duration of that migration, trying to figure out what all of the tasks will be and figuring out a timeline with the project management team.
Nice. So what percentage of your day are you spending writing code versus, project management, scheduling, meetings, etc.?
Yeah, if you'd asked me that a couple weeks ago, it would have been like 90% development work. But since the lead programmer thing, it is very much more 50-50.
Okay.
I'm responsible a lot more for kind of the management duties, which leads to a lot more time spent in those admin tasks.
Okay, got it. So, you were a graduate of Ranken in 2017. You were a successful graduate, meaning you went out and you got a job. So this is a two-part question. What advice do you have to be successful not only at Ranken, but also to be successful outside of Ranken? By that, I mean getting your first job. So in school and after school to get that job.
Sure. For Rankin specific stuff, I would say don't poo-poo on the attendance code too much. It is very real to life. I know it's inconvenient at the time, but being on time and consistent is always going to be good in your business relationships. I would say for other things, establish your social skills. One of the things that have driven me, I think, forward at both Rankin and at work here has been my ability to communicate technical topics to non-technical people. I think that is a very important skill set, particularly knowing how to address higher level people. That might not necessarily be a thing that you need to worry about in a much larger business. But what I've found at the job markets in St. Louis, outside of things like Dougherty or big companies like Anheuser-Busch, you're going to interact with higher ups quite a bit. And I think being able to communicate with them in an effective manner is a very important skill to have.
Yeah, I can think of a family member actually who was not necessarily they didn't work in IT, but they were a hobbyist in IT, and and my family member was a hobbyist. They knew enough to be dangerous, put it that way.
Yep.
And when I would listen to them, they were obviously talking over everybody's head when they were throwing all these tech terms around.
Yep.
And it's almost like they got enjoyment out of talking about something that other people didn't understand. And that doesn't serve anybody well.
Yeah, it might make you feel good in the moment, but it's not going to make the executive that you're talking to feel good. It's not going to make the project manager that you're trying to explain an issue to understand what you're trying to resolve.
Yeah.
It's not going to serve you in the long term.
Yeah, so we learn all these terms and all these, all these technical terms that are fancy and make us seem smart on the surface. But yeah, your point and mine are basically explain like I'm 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to call it dumbing down, but you need to make it accessible for a layman to understand. Somebody who's not in the tech field. And at least in my experience, the business members that you're going to interact with will appreciate it a lot if you're able to communicate with them evenly, if you're able to explain. Like, don't be afraid to say no, depending on the business person. Just be prepared to explain why, what the challenges are, what maybe other options are. Talking to people like they're people, I've found, is a skill that will propel you very far in the tech industry.
Now, you and I were talking recently, and you said, hey, some things at Ranken, like the attendance policy, I find very valuable. You said other things like the facial hair policy, not so much.
Yeah, as soon as I was out of there, we gave up on all those rules.
But I guess my question is, it's the work that you found is a little bit more relaxed than you get to wear a hoodie. You get, you seem like casual, right? Pretty casual at work.
Yeah, part of that is a luxury of being at our own building. I'll have a different dress code that I wear if I have to go to admin. But yeah, I've found that most of the tech places I look at are significantly more relaxed in tech. Granted, that's not every place, so I don't think it's an unreliable expectation, but
so that
is what I've experienced.
The bar that Ranken set might have been a little higher than necessary.
Maybe, but I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing to set it at the extreme so that, expectations aren't subverted.
Yeah. Because it's always easier to lower the bar out in the real world.
Yeah.
So, thinking back to your time at Ranken, did you learn C# at Ranken?
Yep, C# and Java.
And Java, and you use C# in the real world.
Yes.
So that would be some curriculum that worked well for you. Is there an example of some curriculum that you didn't, you don't necessarily use?
I don't think so. I think even the Java stuff had value. So I can tackle this from the perspective of the other developer who works for me, graduated from Webster with a full 4-year degree, right?
Yep.
And I think the difference between he and I is I tend to be a lot more flexible in the tackling of issues that I have, because I think that what Ranken gives you is more of an ability to do that research, to figure out your issues, whereas Blake can say a lot of very technical things. He has a good technical knowledge, but when he starts having to approach things that he didn't learn in that course, it's a little more difficult for him.
Yeah.
Having the wide range of maybe not shallow but not super deep knowledge on a variety of topics is going to give you a foundation to do your own research, learn more. Because what you're going to find in the technical world is every company does things very differently. And a large part of your challenge is going to be relearning how this new company that you're now working for, how their tech stack works, what their different rules are for code habits, how they want things to look, how you have to handle the repository. You're going to have to relearn all of that every time you switch to a company. So having a good foundation of quickly relearning those things is going to serve you well.
Cool. What tips would you give anyone coming out of Ranken to get their first job?
Just knock on doors, put in some resumes. I had success with a recruiting agency. I went through, I think, Duvari for Vantage. But everybody's going to have their own way, and it'll also depend on if you want to work for a small company, a large company, medium company. You're going to want to tailor to suit your needs. But I think starting early is going to do you wonders because you want the experience in the technical field, even if that's not where you're going to stay forever. You don't need to look for that immediately.
Now, my typical advice is to work as hard as you did in school on finding your first job. So think about all the hours and all the work and all the effort that you put into succeeding at school. And if you apply that on the job hunt, it typically comes with a lot of hard work, right? To find that first job. Certainly the first job is the hardest.
Yeah, I think it took me 6 or 7 months because I didn't take that advice and I fell back on, well, I'm working part-time at Target. I can, just put in a couple resumes here and there. And it took me a little bit longer than I would have liked to find a job. I think you do need to be spending a significant amount of time. Switching from that first job to where I currently am was significantly faster because I was a lot more proactive about it.
That's an interesting insight, that you didn't necessarily work hard out of school, and therefore it took you a little bit longer. Now, like you said earlier, every case is going to be unique. But were you starting to get worried?
No. Like I said, I was sitting on Target. I was like, well, I'm making 12, 13 bucks an hour here. I'll just put in a couple resumes a week. And yeah, it would have been nice to have that job faster, but
okay,
there's not much I can do looking back on it now.
Okay. Cool. Now, what kind of expectations should beginning developers have around salary? Like, you're coming out of Ranken. Are there any expectations you would advise? Like, if you had to advise around salary expectations?
I wouldn't advise around expectations. I would say look at the company. The first group I worked for was one who specifically hunted people who were right out of school so that they could pay you less and then progress you into a higher tier. Other companies are going to pay you aggressively for being fresh employees, but they're going to expect you to stick around for a long time. Yeah. So I would say just do your research on the companies that you're trying to look at.
Good answer. The last question that I have kind of in the pre-built questions is, so you've been out for 5 years or so, mm-hmm. and you have a successful, blooming career, and maybe you know the answer to this, maybe you don't. But do you see yourself doing this until retirement, or is this? Do you see like a second career later on at some point in the future?
That's a hard question to answer. With how fast tech moves, right? Yeah. What we know now might not necessarily be a thing in the future. Like, for instance, when I went through Ranken, the operating system course that we took was Windows 7. And that was like right on the tail end of Windows 7 being kind of sunset. Tech moves fast, man. And even where I'm at, we're already looking at transitioning a lot of my job to a software as a service model where I might be transitioning into more of a product subject matter expert. So I think being flexible is important as well, and just keeping your eye on things.
Yeah, but there might come a day where you're like, I've been doing this for 20, 30 years, and now the whole industry has changed for the 5th time, and I'm tired of it.
Yeah, but that's 20, 30 years from now. Who knows what that Chris looks like?
Yeah, great point. So, man, I thought you answered those questions really well. I think those was some good insight. I'd like to open it up for my class to ask you questions. And so, again, these are primarily first semester. They've been in class for about 40 days, 50 days, learning some front end stuff. So let's take a few questions. Yeah.
Since you work in the banking industry, have you seen any COBOL?
No. I would expect to be paid a lot more if I did. But people who are still using COBOL are going to be few and far between. and they're going to be looking for people who know COBOL really well, or they're going to be companies who are willing to invest a lot in somebody who wants to learn COBOL. I haven't seen any personally, but I also wasn't specifically looking for financial institution jobs. This was just one that fell into my lap through Duvari, that contracting agency that I used.
Nice. Yep.
How much? What level of math would you recommend to be at by the time you graduate into the field?
Sorry, what level of what?
Yeah. So how much math would you recommend being at to go into the industry?
Oh goodness, I don't even remember what all the tiers are. I think as long as you're not afraid to go study it, you can kind of be at whatever level you want to be. Paige, Evan, she's not great at math, but she was perfectly successful in her field. I don't think you need to necessarily stress about it. You don't need to be the guy who's like, oh, I'm in trig 3, so I'm going to be perfect, because on a day-to-day basis, what I'm doing is maybe some for loops, maybe some business logic around how money is handled, but at the end of the day, I'm not the one who owns the core system, who owns how all the interest rates are compiled or anything. I suppose if you were getting into that field, you might want a little bit more math, but it's going to heavily depend.
Cool. I got this sun glaring in my eyes. I'm going to shut this door. What other questions do we have? We've got Chris for like another minute or two, please. Yeah. You've answered all the questions. Apparently, no one has questions. Well, thank you so much for your time, Chris. I think I hope my students found this valuable information to be valuable information. I certainly think it was. So, again, congrats on your career. I'm super happy for you. Good luck in the future. Hopefully for the next 20 to 30 years. Who knows?
Thanks, and good luck to all you guys in that classroom.
Yep. All right, man. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Thanks.
All right, later. Bye.